World Without End. Book number 2 of the Kingsbridge series by Mr. Ken Follett. If you haven't already, check out my review for the first book, The Pillars of the Earth. I put that up last week, which means I did this guy in about a week. And look at this, another big boy here. I think this version is a little over 1,000 pages, 1025. Yeah, parts of it were a little rough to get through, but overall, I enjoyed this one much better than The Pillars of the Earth. Just to let you know, first part of this review is going to be spoiler-free, then we'll get to the spoilers in the end. So, World Without End takes place 200 years after the first book. So, we're still in Kingsbridge, and if you know anything about the first book, it's all about building a cathedral. Whereas now, 200 years later, the cathedral's built, we have different problems on our hands. So you've got some people in this book who are descendants of the main characters from the first book, which they kind of remind you of often at the beginning, but then later on, it doesn't really seem to matter. It's like, oh yeah, this is Jack the Builder's relative so-and-so down the line, and then they do it, and then after about 50, 100 pages, forget all about it. There are a lot of new people to meet. Obviously, this one, there's a lot of interconnected families. There's people that are constantly telling you about, oh, this is so-and-so's cousin, and this is so-and-so's nephew or aunt and uncle, and it's a lot. Even a couple 100 pages in, he's like, well, you talked to my cousin. I'm like, oh yeah, they're related. Forgot all about that. But anywho, it's a much better book, I think, than the first one. The first one, because I think it focused so much on the building of the cathedral. That's what it had to focus on, was how are they going to get the money? How are they going to get the supplies? The relationships between people building it, people in the priory and that kind of stuff. Whereas now we don't have that. So we have other problems to explore and see what goes on. In the first one, you had the Prior Philip, who was kind of on the side of the people who were wanting to build the cathedral, because he also wanted to build it. So the priory and the townspeople seemed like they were working as one, whereas this one, the prior, is not so much just willing to do whatever the townspeople or the merchants or the guild wants to do. He's very much, does what's best for the church, what's best for the glory of God. And so that creates some friction. And once again, there is some building in it. The town has to build a new bridge. They have to make repairs to the old cathedral. There's some other things that are getting built, but it's not pages and pages and pages and pages of describing how it's being built. Or in this one, the main mason or builder, he's not explaining every little thing often. So things are still being built. The author, Mr. Follett, he still gets to share his expertise, his knowledge on what he's studied about the subject, but it's not as much. There's a lot, I feel, of repetition from the first one. If you remember from the first one, if you're watching this, I assume you read the first one. The first one, there's that part, we can't sell the wool. There's something wrong with the wool, or the price is too low. What can we do? Hey, let's just turn it into cloth. Happens in this one too. They can't get all the supplies ready in time for an inspection by a bishop coming to town. So, how do we do it? What can we do? Hey, let's have the townspeople help and tell them it'll forgive their sins. They don't have to go to church. They just have to come help us do this. Also in this one. So there's some of that. You have one person, one of the main characters, who travels to another country for a while and then comes back, just like the first one. So some of that you read and you're like, okay, it's the same. But at least in this one, we get some battle scenes with the armies, with the English against the French. You get to see the desolation that they leave behind, and then you actually get to be involved in some of the battle scenes. So that was nice. Like I said, having the prior not being, all just willing to do whatever the townspeople want for whatever they want to build or run their stalls and stands. Okay, that was interesting too. There's one big thing in this book that kind of throws a wrinkle to everything. It's not a big spoiler. I mean, it's half the book. Is this time in 14th century England, you've got a plague that comes in. So the plague comes in. Did I say plague? Plague. The plague comes in, and that really throws a wrench into everything. So, like I said, this book is better. It's better. Still tough to get through. There's still a lot of deep descriptions and pages where you're just like, okay. I got it. In fact, like the first 300 pages are just about the daily lives of people. And you just read through here like, okay, when is like something going to happen? 300 pages, it's just the daily life, their ups and downs. Then about between page 400, around 500, all right, we get a shift in someone's fate. Okay, that's more interesting. And like I said, later on, the plague comes into play, and which really makes things even more interesting. Now, if you read the back of the book, it says here that, 4 people, they witness a murder, a killing in the forest, and that event will braid their lives together forever. Well, yes, it does. But they witnessed this murder in the forest, like the first few pages. There's a big secret surrounding it. And they're told, don't tell anybody this. And then we hear nothing of it for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. And then you get one little blip that has kind of it's a big deal. This little thing happens related to it. But then, nothing until almost like 30 pages till the end. And then finally, we get to this big reveal, the secret. So it's like, why did you put that on the back of the book? Because the whole time I'm like, anything? Nothing. So that was a little disappointing. I wish there was more with that. But overall, like I said, more entertaining for me. All the building stuff is interesting for a while, but then after a while, you're like, okay, I'm tired of reading about arches and vaults and foundations and all that. I get it. So yeah, if you like the first one, you're going to like this one. If you're watching this because you read the first one, you're like, I don't know if I can go through that again. I'm telling you, it's pretty much the same. Same style, obviously. Same amount of words. Descriptions are lengthy. And in the end, there's no real big twists or turns. I think there's only one thing in this book where I went like, oh. But other than that, there's nothing really too crazy or revealing. It's, again, very straightforward about the daily lives of 14th century English people. So, if that's the thing for you, check it out. If you didn't like the first one, don't read it. If you were wishy-washy on the first one, don't read it. I only read it because I bought all 3. I'm kind of like that. I'm just like, oh, all 3, boom, I'll read them. And it's like, okay, I have it. I should read it. So that's why I read it. And there it is, World Without End. If you don't want any spoilers, go ahead and turn it off now. Decide on your own if you want to read it. If you do, you come back for the spoiler section. And I'm going to read the 3rd one. Talk about the 3rd one later. It seems more interesting. But anywho, that's it for no spoilers. So going on now, spoiler time. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did they go? All right, they went. This book. I talked about the one thing that surprised me. That was when Karis joined the nunnery. I wasn't expecting that. She's about to get hanged for being a witch, and then she goes in. I figure, maybe they'll do something with the inspection, or they'll just lie. And he's like, nope, she's a nun. You're like, oh, well, that changes things. So yeah, that was the only big surprise in the book for me. Like I said, the rest of it's just kind of like, in things, I don't know if he meant them to be a big surprise, but I was just like, okay, I saw that coming. All right, let me go back, talk about Thomas Langley, who buries the letter. I was disappointed that we didn't get more with him. He's a brother in the priory. He just kind of walk around. He's there, and we get that one part where the woman comes in with, I think, children, and she's talking to him. But that's all we get. And he didn't become prior. He's just kind of in the background, shows up when needed. So that was disappointing. Who do we got? Prior Anthony. Prior Anthony and his mom felt like William and his mom in the first one. That's exactly what they felt like. And then you have, this one is Ralph. Ralph just feels like William, or a combination of Alfred and William. And so the whole time, that's all I'm just thinking. It's William doing those same things. The one thing, I guess it's kind of bad that the plague is what entertained me here in the story, when people, those boils, whatever. But it's those parts, like the end of the breaks in the sections, when, for example, when those outlaws went to that priory in the forest where Anthony had ran off to. And they're talking to him and they send them away. And it's like, and then they close the windows and in the back, a monk sneezed. And you're like, oh. Or they're having a service in the cathedral. And as people were walking out, someone sneezed. Oh. I was just like, oh, you know what's coming. The only one that it didn't really do anything with was when Ralph went down into the cellar to see his son Sam, and he left, he went out, and then the jailer closed the door, and then he sneezed. I thought, oh, Ralph's going to get it. Maybe he's going to still kill Sam, which I didn't think he would. But then he's going to get the plague, or he's going to take it back to, was it Philippa, his wife? Yeah. So I guess that would be too easy a way for him to go. But yeah, Ralph, what a douchebag. Gwenda and Wulfric, I had a hard time caring too much about their story, because every time we came to them, you knew it's just like, bad stuff's going to happen. Let's see what's going to happen. Nope, taking away your land. Hey, you ran away to get more money. Nope, you're coming back. Everything was just bad. Oh, he finally married me. Gwenda says he loves me. Oh, but he still obviously cares too much for Annette. So it was those people. They just had a rough life. And by the time it comes around to the end, I did feel good at the end when Sam and Gwenda, they ran Ralph right through. That was beautiful. And you're like, okay, good for you guys. You guys had a cruddy life. Karis, Murthan, I thought that was just kind of meh, you know. It felt a lot like the first book, who was Jack and Aline or whatever, you know. Murthan goes off to Florence, does his thing, people die. He's like, well, I want to go back home, obviously for Karis, but it was just so back and forth. And Karis obviously was not going to give in, and she was just like, it's like, dude, come on now. No, you love her, but you got to move on. She's not into it. So yeah, that was just kind of wishy-washy for me. Every time I read it, I'm just like, not much of that. So even though I said I liked this book much more, I guess throughout it, I didn't care too much more about the characters. It was all about just seeing how they were dealing with the ebb and flow of problems, which all these books are. It's just like, hey, things are going great, things are going bad, things are going great, bad, blah, blah, blah. So I said it was better. It's still not my cup of tea. Now the third book, that's all for spoilers. I mean, if you read it, and that's what it is for that. I have Column of Fire. I'm going to read this. This seems more interesting because it talks about, was it the monarch has to set up a country's first secret service to give her early warning of assassination plots, rebellions, and invasion plans. That sounds interesting, and I think it's more in this guy's wheelhouse, Mr. Ken Follett. I think before he wrote these, he was writing spy novels and whatnot. So yeah, I'm definitely going to read this one. I'm actually kind of excited to read this one, as opposed to World Without End. I was like, okay, let me just read it. So I'm going to read this one, probably be done within a week. So come back and check that out, and I will see you then. Ciao.